can you help me navigate on which level I will learn grammar? I've been scanning through level 25, but I can't see it. And will you have a video explaining how to construct a sentence as you do in the pronunciation mastery course? And I'll get to that in a second. And then Jim says, towards the end of level 7, Phil said that understanding a sentence is how a person starts slowly building their understanding of grammar. I know that sentences aren't my focus until character 105, and I also know that there are infinite variations of sentences. I'm just curious what to expect once I reach character 105 and focus on sentences. So these are very related. So the response, I sent Jeffrey an email about this in response because, it comes down to the idea that the way that we should acquire grammar is by looking at sentence structures and understanding how they're put together. Now, we're adults, and so we like to think like that. We like to go, well, how is this constructed? We're very curious in that way, in a way that children aren't. They're just sort of like taking it in. We're able to conceptualize the idea of a subject, verb, object, or throwing in an adverb. We can understand that to some degree, but it is sort of categorically different than acquiring language. So what I said was, you actually have been getting our grammar materials since level 13 and learning grammar, or more specifically, acquiring grammar. Now, with that said, it's important to think a little bit about what is the process that's happening in your brain. So, we brought up before the idea of 99% of talent is work and effort. It's about the days, it's about the hours more than it is about the days or the years. And what is happening anytime that you repeat a behavior? This is just based on some research that I was doing last week, and I also had heard about this before. But when you do a behavior that is either good or bad, like for me, I'm a nail biter, so that increases, that's a bad behavior that I'll keep doing, or maybe it's going to the gym every day. When you do the behavior, it increases what is called myelin on your neuron. So the neuron has got 3 very basic parts. It could go way more detailed than this, but you've got like the nucleus, which is the main part of the neuron, an axon, which is sort of the way that energy travels from the nucleus to other neurons, and then the axon terminal, which connects to the other neurons. Now, that axon is kind of like a tube. So if you look at a picture of a neuron, it's sort of the long part of the neuron. And electricity can degrade and disperse, right? So what stops it from dispersing in the axon is these sheaths called myelin, right?
Yeah, fatty sheaths.
Yeah, exactly. And when you do a behavior, through a process called myelination, you add a layer to that. And so that's why people who are incredible at their, say, piano is one that always comes up to me. I play with a piano player named Mark, and he's so skilled that he doesn't have to think about something. We'll just say, hey, Mark, can you change the key to E flat? And he just does it, right? Doesn't even have to think about it. And so what's happening there is that the myelin sheaths around his neurons are so well developed that the energy just passes through them without him even having to consciously think about it. So when you are taking in a sentence in Chinese that you understand, you could think of that as adding a very thin layer of myelin around the axon that relates to that particular language center in your brain. And this isn't something that you can do once and expect the energy to not degrade, but as you do this, what you're picking up on and what you're creating the myelin sheaths about is the pattern more so than the specifics of that individual sentence. So, if there's a pattern that happens with sentences where an object or a noun or a person tends to go before this other thing, maybe a verb, well, it's not the rule that you're getting accustomed to. It's the pattern of these many sentences that have the same, sort of rules within them. So why do I bring that up? Well, because there is some debate about whether or not learning grammar rules is effective. We tend to kind of fall in the camp of it's pretty risky to do because it's very tempting to do. You want to go, oh, I learned all these grammar rules because I read this book, and it can kind of lead you astray. But because there is some debate about it, we do actually have some materials about it. Those materials relate to the tags that we put in your Anki decks. I feel like do you have a comment you wanted to say about the theory before I get into the specifics?
I was just going to, but one little thing was just that, we're not, there's people that are much smarter than us and also that have been studying this all their lives that are, that have very different opinions. So we don't want to sit here and say that we know how grammar is acquired, definitively. But so that's why we're sort of don't want to put all our eggs in one basket.
I'm certainly more than willing to say that this is where my instinct tells me,
Absolutely,
but nonetheless,
based
though,
on our experience.
Yeah, and
as
our
well.
experience and research, whatever. But still, you're absolutely right, and there is debate about it. So I was thinking about this a few months ago. What's the best way to present this in a way that's sticking with the idea of building up those? You could think of it this way: it's building up those myelin sheaths of pattern recognition while also pointing it out to people. So we go, oh, look, this thing you already saw several sentences like this. It happens to have this structure. So what I did with the help of our Sichuan University teacher, Annie, who's been just smashing the grammar materials that we've been making, was come up with a tagging system for each sentence that shows the sentence structure, but at least with some language that's not so boring and linguistic, right? And so I might have a structure that's something like host, how, does, what, type of object. And what that would mean is that you've got a subject that has an adverbial modifier and a verb and an object. And the type of is a Chinese character called a dingyu. It's a Chinese grammar point where it's basically saying, I could say mama, or I could say 我的妈妈. So it's what type of mom is it? It's mine. Or there's many other ways you could describe the subject, but mama is still the subject. It's like what kind?
Mama,
sure.
Right?
Yeah, the mother of life or something like that.
生病.
Oh, 生病的妈妈. They say 生命的妈妈.
Like sick mother. Would that
yeah,
work
sure,
as well?
sure. That right, because it's still she's the point.
Right,
she's the subject, and so you say 生病的妈妈 is a description of her, so that you would call that a 定语. And all of that stuff is, if you get
so long to get my head around when I was there.
Yeah. All that stuff, if you just say type of host, so what type of mama is it? Oh, it's the kind that's sick or whatever.
Right.
And so these aren't linguistically precise terms, but what they allow for you to do is get the basic idea and visualize it. Now, there's about 30 or 40 of these sentence structure tags, and then we have a bunch of grammar word tags and some other tags. And the answer for Jeffrey is that you're already acquiring grammar. These sentences that you have do have tags, and if you're a bit of a go-getter and you like to figure this stuff out, you can go and look through the tags and see if you can spot these patterns. But we also haven't totally finished the materials on this yet. As you guys know, this is a living course, and we're still building it up. And right now, we actually feel that the priority is to expand out the order further so that you can keep going past level 36. But we do actually have some ideas already and some plans for how we're going to present that material. But just remember that there is a whole bunch of linguistic research that says that the main thing that you should be doing is understanding the messages you're seeing. So even though it's an unconscious process, even though it's something that doesn't maybe feel so satisfying when you're just looking at a bunch of sentences compared to reading a grammar point and going, I understand that grammar point conceptually in an abstract way, it's actually helping you. It's definitely helping you. And so
it's building that myelin.
Yeah, building up those myelin sheaths. So that kind of relates to what Jim was asking, is what can you expect after character 105? Well, you can expect to get sentences that are made of the characters and words that you already know, which means that your likelihood of understanding them is incredibly high. And of course, if we do insert a word that you don't know yet, we tell you. It's like we call them top-down words, which is basically just, okay, this word is high frequency enough and used enough that you could learn it without necessarily building from the bottom up to the components and pinyin and whatever. You might just be able to learn it because people say it all the time. So we'll call those top-down words. We will give you the pinyin for those. But everything else, you already know the pinyin because you got these great mnemonic scenes for them. So as you progress through the course, when you get past character 105, you know enough to be able to start building up those grammar myelin sheaths.